Can you see the screen, Bante?
Yes.
We'll start from here. The Tas Sammaditi.
Yeah, correct.
Thus, Sammaditi aims at the utter eradication of all weaves, together with the propensities towards the same. The entire conceptual structure has to leave, though gradually, and in the final reckoning, even those concepts that have rendered us the greatest help in our spiritual endeavor have to make their bow. As such, one must be extremely cautious in regard to concepts pertaining to Sammaditthi. One might distinguish between the relatively true and false in theory, between the precise and the vague in terminology, between the scholastic and the wayward in phraseology. But one has to remember that as concepts they all one. Nor should one seriously regard some concepts as absolute and inviolable categories in preference to others, and pack them up in watertight cartons labeled Paramattha. Indeed, he may regard some concepts as Paramattha in the sense that they are more conducive to the attainment of the goal than others. Truer, more precise, and more scholastic. In this connection, we may also add that the word Paramattha, in its earlier non-technical usage, actually meant the highest goal as the object of realization, and any words tending towards that goal were called Paramattha Samhita, connected with the highest goal, irrespective of their precision or technicality. However, the Buddha, for his part, was content to treat all of them as sammuti. For him, they were merely worldly conventions in common use, which he made use of without clinging to them. One wonders whether this simple thought of profound attitude of the Buddha towards concepts has been properly handed down in the tradition. When, for instance, one comes across the following verse quoted approvingly by Buddhaghosha, source unknown, in his commentary to the Anangana Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya. Duve satchani akkasi sambuddho vadatang varu sammutin paramattancha tatiyang nupalabbati sanketa vachanang satchang loka sammutikarana paramatta vachanang satchang dhammanang bhutakarana tasma vohara kusalassa lokanathassa sattuno sammutin voharantassa musavado nachayati. The fully enlightened one, the best of those who speak declared two truths, the conventional and the absolute. There can be no third. Words of symbolic nature are true by reason of their existence in the worldly parlance. Words of absolute significance are true by reason of the existence of elements. Hence, even though the Lord of the world, the teacher versed in worldly parlance, makes use of such conventional speech, there arises no offense of falsehood for him. One can appreciate the significance.
If one can appreciate
the significance of the term Nippapancha, one might realize that the Buddha could magnanimously afford to dispense with such naive defenses as the above, against any charges of his having violated the fourth precept. Yet another deviation.
Yeah, I'll interrupt a little, someone here. Now, basically, as we know, we are proceeding with the sasana. So there are various changes have happened with the dispensation of the Buddha, particularly to the Sangha councils. And you know that we started with very basic. Buddha started with very few 5 ascetics, then they become 5 members of the Sangha, and then slowly few more get joined, and then 60 arahants, and then they were dispersed to explain the Dhamma. So likewise, the Buddha established the sasana, and then as he passed away, so there are certain deviations have happened, certain say discrepancies have happened, and accordingly there was a first council after the Buddha's passing away, 3 months after his passing away, and then the second council happened, and then even the third council has happened. So likewise, different changes have taken place. And basically, so as we continue, so previously it seems like all the information, all the Dhamma Buddha has preached were divided into Dhamma and Vinaya. And later it is further categorized into Dhamma, Vinaya, as well as then the Abhidhamma. So Vinaya Pitaka, Sutta Pitaka, and then the Abhidhamma Pitaka. So basically 3 Pitakas have come. So previously what we had was Dhamma and Vinaya. So all the Dhamma were included in the Sutta Pitaka, and then the Vinaya, discipline related, monastic code related stuff were compiled into the Vinaya Pitaka. And later it's further divided into 3 canons, 3 Pitakas, including the Abhidhamma Pitaka. And in the third Sangha Council, Sanghayana, there were few further books were included. Pudgala Panyatti, like those few books were included to the Abhidhamma Pitaka. So likewise, some sort of a growing has happened. But anyway, we need to understand, so in one sense, complication also has happened. Probably you know there's a fact that during the Buddha's time, actually there were less rules than today. So he basically, as he continued, there were many people start joining the sasana, and certain ethical conduct related issues have arisen. So according to he has to time establish various monastic rules, and so ultimately currently we have 227 altogether monastic rules for the high ordained monks. But in the early Buddha's dispensation, there were not many such precepts, but all are very much ethical, and they are fairly morally uplifted, and they are so concerned about their meditation, so concerned about their goal, and most of them were even able to achieve the goal. But as we continue, we can see, even though there are many precepts were established, many precepts were included, but less realizations. Basically, what we need to understand is that the early Buddha's time, the early sasana, there were less precepts, but many arahants, we can say. Later, there are many precepts, but less arahants. So we can see that some sort of a deviation has happened. So people has deviated from from patipatti, from the practice, to some sort of intellectual analysis, intellectual categorizations, and some scholarly attributions. So likewise, certain deviation has happened. But in the early Buddha's time, people are not concerned about that kind of complex analysis. Rather, they were so concerned about the realization. That's why they have spent a fair amount of time in the far places practicing, being alone, secluded, and giving more emphasis onto the practice. And this is a kind of a tendency as in the human's mind, which has evolved with time. So previously they are spending some simple lifestyle, particularly based on the agricultural society. and they are concerned about the practice and to get liberated. But later, more than the practice, they were concerned about analysis, concerned about scholarly literature, and further elaborations. So more descriptive analysis is something started getting into the Sasana. And here, whenever Jnanananda seems against this against in the sense, particularly more descriptive, more analytical, and more theoretical stuff, and basically coming into and mixing up with the original Buddha's teaching, and then telling that is kind of a paramatta satya, and then these are the sammuti satya. So likewise, some sort of a categorization has happened with time. Probably you have heard when typically Abhidhammatta Sangha is compiled in Sri Lanka. So they basically has emphasized there are two satyas, two different truths. One is the paramatta satya, the ultimate kind of truth. The other is the sammuti satya, the conventional kind of truth. So this is how the typical Abhidhamma categorization has happened. So under the paramatta satya, they consider rupa, chitta, etc. So the material aggregates, and then the chitta, the mind, and then the nibbana. So they are considered them most as the paramatta, and then sammuti is something different. So basically, sometimes later, even the suttas, they seems to have given less value than these certain Abhidhammic teachings. So Abhidhammic teachings were so precise in a way, precise in the sense more calculative, more analytical, more descriptive, and needs fair amount of scholarly skill to understand. So people were even so concerned about it, get into that direction. But the practice was very much like given less priority, and the pariyatti has come to the first. In the history of the Sasana, there's a kind of a deviation has happened from the realization, from the practice, to the other scholarly analysis, scholarly kind of intellectual analysis, where the pariyatti has come forward, patipatti has come down. That is where some sort of a deviation has happened. So then certain Buddhist suttas also were given less prominence, considered them as the Vohara Desana, considered them as the kind of conventional stuff. But now monks and the audience are more concerned about certain theoretical or dogmatic kind of teachings rather than continuing with one's practice. So here, that's why here when Jnanananda is now paying some attention to what has happened in the later categorization into the Dhamma, considering certain teachings as paramatta, since they are existing, and then certain teachings as sammuti, which are kind of concepts. But anyway, we already discussed that certain conventional stuff are needed. We are using them properly so that the realization is possible. On the other hand, categorizing certain stuff as paramatta and paying too much emphasis to that and trying to remember all that and carrying all that on one's head, remembering that, has given some overemphasis. And then we get into a more scholarly type of analysis, maybe theoretical understanding, but not much paying attention to the practice. And then practice basically tells about the abandoning. We last week discussed how Buddha has looked into the Dhamma. So he basically compared his teaching, the Dhamma, to a raft. As we discussed last time with respect to the Alavedaddupama Sutta. So Buddha say, Dhammopi bhikkave pahatabba pangeva dhamma. Monks, even this Dhamma has to be abandoned once you are able to make use of it. And it is not for something to attach it. It is not something for you to adhere It is like a raft. So if you found that this shore is dangerous and you have to go to the other shore, and there is no boat or there is no bridge available, then you are preparing a raft using some raw material available in this site. And later, once the raft is created, prepared, and using your own effort also, now you are trying to go to the other shore. So once you cross to the other shore, if someone is telling, okay, I have used this raft, it was so useful, I have to take it with me, I am putting it on my head, on my shoulder, I am carrying it. Then Buddha said that is not the way to do it. Rather, the raft was useful, but now you need to abandon it because the purpose is done. Similarly, Buddha say, Dhammopi bhikkhave Nissaranattayapi Dhamman desissami no Gahanattaya but Nissaranattaya. So basically the point he highlights is that this Dhamma, why he has mentioned, how he has put it, is very much like for the realization and to cross to the other shore, but not for the grasping. Kullupamam o bhikkhave dhamman desissami nittaranattaya no gahanattaya. I am referring this Dhamma as like a raft. It is the purpose with the crossing over, but not for the grasping. So this is how he is putting into the correct perspective. So if someone is overemphasizing, okay, certain teachings are paramatta, those are the most sublime, most important ones. You need to remember all that, you need to memorize all that. Then we are in a way categorizing certain parts as something so special. But here Venerable Jnananda is emphasizing, according to the early Buddhist teachings, paramatta is nothing but the Nibbana, practically realizing Nibbana, and whatever which is causing, helping to realize Nibbana is something called Paramatta Sanghita, which are contributing towards this realization. But later the term Paramatta being used for discussing various other stuff, giving certain other meanings, so that overemphasis is given to certain, still some conventions. So there was no such ultimate things as such, but now later they start developing kind of a tradition telling, okay, these things are more important and these things are to be memorized and these are less important, they can be abandoned, something like that. So when Jnananda argues, we can't do like that. What Buddha mentioned or considered as Paramatta is nothing but the Nibbana. What is contributing to understand that is Paramatta Sanghita. And basically, we don't need to give any emphasis to anything. Whatever we are using, even the Dhamma, is for the realization purpose, crossing over to the other shore, and later that also need to be abandoned. So this context we need to understand, and a fair validity is there about his argument. Now we can further continue, Saman.
Yet another deviation from the original position at the commentarial level is to be seen in Buddhaghosa's interpretation of a passage in the Vinaya Chullavagga concerning the Buddha's attitude towards language. At 239, it is said that two monks named Yamilu and Tekula, who were Brahmins skilled in the elegancies of expression, Kalyana Vacha, Kalyana Vyakarana, once complained to the Buddha that the word of Buddha is being corrupted by those who, having entered the order from various castes and tribes, were using their own dialects to study the Dhamma. Etarahi bante bhikkhu nana nama nana gotta. Etarahi bante bhikkhu nana nama nana gotta nana dacha nana kula pabbajita te sakaya niruttya buddha vachanan dusenti. Hence, in order to stop that corruption, they sought the Buddha's permission to apply rigorous of meter in fixing the text of Buddha's words. Handa mayam bante buddha vachanang chandaso aropamati. Aropamati. The Buddha, however, rebuked them, saying that the proposed method was not conducive to the progress of the dispensation, and having rejected the offer, made an allowance for the liberal study of the Dhamma in one's own language. Anujanami bhikkhave sakaya niruttya buddha vachanam pariyapunitum. Curiously enough, this last sentence in the Chullavagga passage has been so interpreted by Buddha Ghosha as to mean that Buddha wished everyone to study the Dhamma in the Buddha's own language. Sakaya niruttyati etta sakha nirutti nama
Samma sambuddhena
vuttappakaro Magadika Voharo. Quite apart from the question of Papancha, the very context itself points to the fact that Buddha never subscribed to such a view. The Buddha's rebuke of the two monks in rejecting their offer and the obvious implications of the two words Sakaya Niruttya, one's own dialect, note that the same expression was used by the two monks, would go to prove that Buddha allowed everyone to learn the Dhamma in his own language. As a measure conducive to its dissemination, how liberal the Buddha was with regard to the dialects in worldly usage may be clearly seen in the following passage of the Aranabhivagga Sutta.
Yeah, one moment. Now here we can understand the context. So there was no any kind of a restriction for one to become a monk. So Buddha has allowed all different clans, all different nationals, all different locations come through. So certain monks originally are from Brahmin clan. Certain others may be from the trade clan. And others may be even from the lower caste. So likewise, Buddha basically has denied the caste system. He basically was concerned about their good qualities, the conduct. And therefore, many different caste people have become monks, and they are coming from even different traditions and maybe from different areas. So they had their own dialects, own languages. And they started studying Dhamma from their own language. And this is something noticed by these two monks. And now they want to systemize the Dhamma, very much like standardize the Dhamma. And they want to put it into a one language. Chandasa means basically Sanskrit related language. So they want to put it into such kind of fixed language so that others can't do any kind of change or any kind of their own mixing. So it is very much like fixed. But you can see that Buddha has denied it. Buddha simply allowed people to study the Dhamma using their own language. Now say for example, here in Sri Lanka, there are many Sinhala books written on the Dhamma. So many are getting benefited by reading those books. Actually now we are using English book, which is also explaining the Dhamma. And that is quite useful. So we can explain, we can discuss, we can preach, we can teach using different languages so that the audience may understand. But if we simply standardize telling, okay, this is the language you need to use every time, and you can't change it, you can't translate it, you can't even learn the Dhamma using those translated languages, or always have to come to the original text. So then it's kind of a restriction. Then only a very, limited people would be able to understand the Dhamma. But on the other hand, Buddha wants to open it. Buddha wants us to understand it, and so that many people can go through it, understand it, study it from their own languages. Then it will be more closer to their heart, more pleasing to their heart, and even more easier for them to go ahead because it is written in their own language. So there's a very good purpose here, allowing us to learn from our own languages. Then only it will distribute it. Then only it will be going to various areas. But if we restrict only to a particular language, then everybody is asked to learn that language, study that language. Only in that language, Dhamma is explained. You can't put anything else. Then it's a kind of a restriction. It will basically prohibit many people coming in, many people studying into Dhamma. So Buddha simply even used the Magadhi, the language of the Pali, even just for a purpose. It is not saying that the Magadhi language, the Pali language is the best language. We can't even say like that. Maybe during the Buddha's time, it is the most applicable language, which is easier, user-friendly to explain. So Buddha might have used it. But the realization is not dependent on the language. So language can direct us towards a practice, and then we may be getting involved with the practice. And as a result of the correct practice, one may get into the goal, realize the goal, and which is completely independent from the language, and even independent from all these different terminologies, languages, other various structures that we have used. So all those are, in a way, certain tools helping us to realize. So Buddha had this clear understanding, the clear perspective. He didn't want to fix anything. So he is speaking Dhamma in certain languages, so that can be translated, that can be explained by many different languages. Then the audience can understand from their language. Now, say for example, nowadays Bhikkhu Bodhi has translated all the Pali scriptures into English. So many are making use of it. Many, particularly available in the West, are making use of it. They are learning it, studying it, and they get thorough understanding about it because it is presented in their language. Similarly, during the Buddha Jayanti period, the canon was translated into Sinhala. So many are using it. We can go and refer to that. So it's quite easy understanding that in the same language, some own language. So Buddha's attitude, having flexibility into this reference, flexibility into language, is fairly highlighted. But on the other hand, as Venerable Jnananda points out, Venerable Buddhaghosa seems to have a different view, that he wants to fix things, and he simply interpret even the Buddha's action, what he has done towards that two monks, also in a different way. He doesn't have the proper context here, but rather he has taken a different meaning here. But we all can understand what Buddha has done. The prohibiting, putting everything, the Dhamma, into one fixed language is something that Buddha denied. But basically, he simply has given the flexibility to study the Dhamma in one's own language. You can spend a few more minutes, Saman.
Yeah, Bhante. Jager, who also takes chandas to mean either Sanskrit or Sanskrit verse, fully endorses Buddhaghosa's peculiar rendering of Sakaya Nirutya. He proceeds to conclude that even during the lifetime of the Buddha, There was a strong tendency to preserve the Buddha's teachings, not only as to its content, but also with regard to its external form. And that, according to this passage, the Buddha encourages that tendency. He even observes that neither the two monks nor Buddha himself could have thought of preaching in different dialects in different cases. Miss Honor likewise grants the possibility that chandas can mean Sanskrit, but she considers that the intention of the two monks is to give the speech of the awakened one in metrical form. Buddhaghosa's specification of the expression Sakaya Niruttya in the latter instance, note that which explained that expression after commenting on the Chandaso Aropema means the Buddha's own dialect, Magadhi, has been generalized by Miss Honor. Thus, she renders the request to the two monks. At present, Lord, monks of various names, various clans, various social strata have gone forth from various families. These corrupt the speech of the awakened one in using his own dialect. The Books of Discipline 5, SSB 194. The issue now seems to have become rather complicated. It is very likely that the intention of Yamelu and Tekula was to safeguard the sanctity of purity of the Buddha's words from possible infiltration of dialectical variance and phonetic decay. Hence, the remedy cannot lie in the merely translating the Buddha Vachana into Sanskrit. Those two monks probably had a sophisticated attitude. Sanjananti vitanti sanjananti saravati.
We'll get to the other part, Sanj.
Ah.
We'll ignore that one and we'll get into the English part.
Yeah. When it is said one should not affect the dialect of the countryside, one should not deviate from the recognized parlance. In reference to what is it said, and what monks is affectation of the dialect of the countryside, and what is the departure from recognized parlance. In this case, monks in different districts, they know the different words: Pati, Patta, Vitta, Sarava, Dharopa, Pona, Pisila. Thus, they know the word as this or that in these various districts. So does a person obstinately clinging to it and adhering to it. Explained, this indeed, the truth of all else is falsehood. Thus, monks is affectation of the dialect of the countryside and departure from parlance. And what monks is non-affectation of the dialect of the countryside and non-departure from parlance. In this case, monks in different districts, they know the different words: Pati, Patta, Vitta, Sarava, Dharopa, Pona, Pisila. Yet, although they know the word as this or that in these various districts, a person does not cling to it, but explains. These venerable ones definitely express it thus. Thus, monks is non-affectation of the dialect of the countryside and non-departure from the recognized parlance.
Yeah, so we'll explain that point. So basically, this is a very, very interesting and very profound example that Buddha is giving. So we all know the ball. You know that monks are using patra, the patta, or the bowl, which is used for having their meals. So the monks are carrying the bowl. So now in English we call it as bowl, and in Pali it is called patta. And here Buddha has given few more terms like pati, patta, vitta, sarava, then dharopa, pona, pisila. Now these are different terms used. So now we know, okay, in English we can refer it as ball, and in Sinhala we can refer it as patra, and in Pali we can refer it as patta. So likewise, at different locations, at different areas, from different languages, the same utensil, the same thing we are using from different names. So if someone says, okay, you should always use the Pali term as the patta, that is the only name that you should refer. Every other names should never be used, and all those different names are entirely wrong, entirely useless. Only the term patta is the correct form. Then we are in a way grasping a language. We are grasping a terminology and denying everything else. But Buddha simply say kind of a flexibility should be experienced here. The same object can have different terms or can have different language terms to indicate it, to label it, to recognize it. So whenever you are going to that area, so they refer the ball using their own language. They have their particular name given to it. So there is no any issue with it because they are using their language. So they have come up with their own convention. Okay, we will refer to this instrument using this name. So they all know now. They all conventionally understood that. So what we need to understand is that the language is there for a purpose, but not for any kind of adherence, not for any kind of taking it as a supreme thing, as the best thing. This is the only thing. Everything else is false. Then we are in a way too much attached to it. We are getting to some sort of a grasping rather than simply using it for a purpose. So therefore Buddha's understanding, the Buddha's way of presenting things are very profound in that sense. So he know that these are mere languages. They don't have any kind of intrinsic value. So language is there for communication. So we can use different languages. If someone is telling, okay, Sinhala language is the best language, all the other languages are, say, inferior, then there may be conflicts. And then we have attached to our own language maybe. And the others might even refute that. Others might even come to kind of a conflict because they may have their own desires, own biases towards their languages. So, but the point we need to understand is there is a purpose for language. There's a purpose for convention. That is what we are using just to communicate among ourselves. Then that there is no any kind of intrinsic value onto any of these conventional things. That's why even Buddha in the Arahanta Sutta highlights that the Arahant, he also may use languages. He also might refer, I have preached, someone has told me. So he is also using the typical parlance, I, me, etc. But knowing it is merely a language, knowing it is merely a reference, and know that this doesn't have any kind of intrinsic essence rather than they are merely conventions. Okay, with that discussion, I would like to conclude today's part into the discussion of this concept and reality book. Now, if you have any questions related to today's discussion, or if you have anything to discuss about your practice, now we can take some time for that.
Sarai Mante, we have 6 questions today.
Right.
Actually, 7 questions today. Question number 1 of 7. This is on mindful walking. Dear Bhante, during the walking mindfulness practice, I start with the attention on the soles of the foot. After some time, I start feeling the sensations on the hands and fingertips, even though I don't move the hands. These are mainly hot and cold nature when wind touches. Also, sometimes I feel the movement of the shoulders and spinal muscles caused by the walking process. This attention on multiple locations seems not calming or relaxing as the focus on the foot, but I can observe them consistently. I can get back to the source if I want to observe the left and right foot touching the ground. Much merits if you can explain the difference of the spread across attention and focused attention and how it is relevant to the practice. With metta, that's the end of the question.
Yeah, I feel now focused attention basically a kind of minimalist kind of an attention. Say there are many sensations are there. Say for example, your foot is touching the ground and many different sensations are there. Maybe hardness, maybe softness, maybe roughness, maybe smoothness, maybe vibration. So many things are there. So rather than paying attention to all of them, say you select, okay, I am only paying attention to hardness. It doesn't mean none of the others are not existing, but you have given priority, the prominence for hardness, and you are trying to understand its true nature, how it is behaving. So for that, you need focused attention. On the other hand, kind of a spread attention, we can say, okay, you are spreading attention to a limited area, to your ankle or to your foot, then many other sensations are also available. Then you can get some other perspective about the same experience. But on the other hand, I like to add another part here. That is where suppose that you continue your practice, and as a result of your practice, then mind starts letting go of things, abandoning things, and say you experience complete detachment. Nothing is there for you to attach with. Everything is abandoned. Mind becomes released. Now, how we need to maintain our attention is not the focused attention, is not the kind of limited area type of attention. Rather, it's a complete open awareness. So we can see a kind of a evolution happen how we are looking at things. At the beginning, we need to precisely pay attention to certain phenomena to know their characteristic. And with time, we have to maintain a kind of a difference, kind of a detachment, so that the mind easily get released. So this sort of a scenario is there. And later, suppose that you are able to completely give up all things, detach from everything, and no grasping at all, no object at all currently as to pay attention, then at that time, the mind has to be fairly open. Then we can say it's a kind of an open awareness one needs to maintain. So therefore, I hope that you understand this evolution happens in us.
Question number 2 of 7. This is also mindful walking. Dear Venerable Sir, during walking practice, I pay attention to the soles of my foot and observe the sensations as per the instructions. I feel how the pressure of the foot transfers across the sole. Also, there are hot and cold areas. Sometimes the smooth and roughness of the surface can be perceived as well. In these observations, how do we understand if we are passively knowing these sensations, or is it something active? In Sinhalese, it is possible to differentiate දැනීම and දැන ගැනීම. Also, much merits if Venerable can explain the transformation of the observations in the walking process, if it is similar to the breath, as explained in the Anapanasati Sutta. With metta, that's the end of the question.
Yeah, actually, at the beginning, we are too much struggling and we don't know the exact amount of energy that we need to put. And therefore, we can say it's kind of a දැන ගැනීම. It's kind of a forceful analysis that we are trying to do. And forceful kind of a, how to say, a kind of forceful knowing that what we are trying to do. Because we don't know how to properly balance the faculties. The necessary amount of mindfulness might not be there. The necessary amount of concentration might not be there. So likewise, sometimes we can say it's not yet properly balanced. But with time, we start balancing our faculties. Now the necessary amount of mindfulness is there, necessary amount of concentration is there. So the objects become more and more visible, and their evolution also easy to understand because we are maintaining proper balance in the faculties. Now, if we consider the evolution in the walking practice, so in parallel with the Anapanasati practice, some parallelism is there. Now, if we consider Anapanasati, so we start with Sato Vasasati, Sato Pasasati. So simply knowing, okay, this is in-breath, this is out-breath. In the walking also, we know, okay, this is left foot, this is right foot. And later in the Anapanasati, this is long, this is short, and this is the beginning, this is the middle, this is the end. So likewise, we are going into more subtle details. And in the walking practice also, we are going to subtle details, like how weight transfer from one leg to the other leg, and maybe what are the sensations available, maybe the movements available. So likewise, we are getting to more detailed information. And the Anapanasati, as a result of this practice, the breath starts calming down, relaxing. And ultimately, even we can't understand whether it is the in-breath or the out-breath that we are experiencing. So similarly, in the walking practice also, we can see kind of a separation happen, and the body simply moves and we become like outsiders, and whatever the sensations become kind of far from us or difficult to understand. So everything like blurred, everything like mixed, we can say it's or everything very much like a flux. So we can't objectify things. We can't distinctly recognize things because everything has blurred. Everything has merged like. So we can't have a distinction between different element characteristics. Everything appears like a kind of a mixture as a flux. So here actually we can see kind of a detachment arise in the mind after understanding this sort of an evolution. And here also you might get Piti Sukha as a result of this detachment because mind is now simply letting go of things. That is also possible. And that is also explained in the Anapanasati. One may reach to the level of Piti Sukha, a kind of a comfortable feeling. And that also one may start understanding how it is coming and going, changing, etc. So that also may become sort of abandoned, subsided. So similarly in walking practice also, user, the yogi might deviate himself from the Kayagata Sati, the Kaya Anupassana, to the feelings, to the Vedana Anupassana. It might happen naturally. We don't need to purposely try to do it. So anyway, I mean, for theoretical understanding, we can compare Anapanasati with the walking practice. But rather than doing so, I feel let the practice naturally evolve. So if we are putting too much analysis into practice, then we are going from a different angle. We are trying to control it. We are trying to intellectually understand it. It may have a purpose for us to convince for the practice. Good, no problem. But during the practice, don't try to do that. During the practice, keep it very simple. You have to be a beginner. You have to be innocent. You have to maintain a very grounded kind of attitude. Then only it will be successful.
Question number 3 of 7. This is a general question. Dear Bhante, how can we understand contemplation or yoniso manasikara, which is a major teaching in terms of prapancha, and cessation of conceptual thought process? My limited understanding tells me that these two are not compatible. We are thankful and much merits for your service. With metta, that's the end of the question.
We can say the proliferation happens, conceptual proliferation happens because of not having yoniso manasikara. So if we are properly using yoniso manasikara, then we can't have conceptual proliferation. So if we are started using yoniso manasikara, then we are going to the source, to the roots, how things are happening. Rather than promoting thinking, rather than promoting conceptual proliferation, we go to the source, we go to the roots, we go to the reasons. So as we go to that level, basically mind stops thinking. So therefore, they are quite opposite to each other. The more one has very precise, penetrative kind of yoniso manasikara, that indicates his inner chatter has to be fairly subsided. his overthinking has to be fairly stopped. His mind has to be fairly calm, relaxed, and attentive. Back to you, Chamila.
Question number 4 of 7. This is also a general question. Dear Bhante, if someone new to Buddhism asks what is the essence or base of our spiritual journey, what should be the most appropriate answer from Bhante's understanding? With metta, that's the end of the question.
The essence of our practice. So, can you repeat that, Chamila?
Yeah. If someone new to Buddhism asks what is the essence or base of our spiritual journey, what should be the most appropriate answer?
We can say to be more peaceful. That means to overcome suffering, we can say. Simply to free from suffering. By the way, we need to understand, first of all, there's a kind of a friction available right now. There's a suffering available right now. Some kind of an unsatisfactoriness available right now. So the practice helps us to overcome that, to liberate from that. So there is no suffering at all. So therefore, we can say in that sense, so the result of the practice is happiness.
Question number 5 of 7. Dear Bhante, what is meant by surface level, shallow samadhi? With metta, that's the end of the question.
I hope this is coming from Chamila. So basically, so here I need to explain the context, how I put it. Basically, if I am talking about it in general, we are talking a different subject. Say, for example, in the jhana practice, there may be a deeper concentration and there may be a shallow concentration. What I mean is, in the deeper concentration, one may be absorbed thoroughly to a particular object, and the depth of the samadhi may be very, very deep. But on the other hand, if you are in a shallow samadhi, that means the depth of the samadhi may be less. So you are very much in the surface. Hope you understand. So with respect to a samadhi, there is a depth also. You can go deeply absorbed and completely adhere, completely absorbed to something. Then one can say, okay, there's a certain depth to the samadhi. But on the other hand, rather than going so deep, you can just maintain the mind at the shallow level. But the disadvantage is you are quite vulnerable to various sensual objects coming in. So that we need to understand. So basically, now if I ask a question, now if we have too many defilements, can we keep the mind at shallow level so that the mind will get not inflicted with defilements? Or is it easy for us to go to a deeper samadhi, and as the power of the concentration, as the strength of the concentration, the protection of the concentration, are we able to keep the mind free from defilements? Which one is correct? Chamila, any idea?
The second one, so you go deep into samadhi and then...
So we can go to a deeper samadhi and be there because we get a lot of protection by the samadhi and we are like in a bunker, so that all the defilements can't reach there because we are in a kind of a safe place. We have gone in the deeper samadhi. So this has a purpose. So therefore, deeper samadhi has a purpose because we are still tormented by various defilements. So we are going absorptions, we are going more deep samadhi, depth samadhi, and we can be free from defilements. But that does not guarantee the elimination of defilements. So defilements are still there. Once you come out, still those defilements coming and torment you. Now, so what should be the practice then? So the practice has to be, first maybe you are going to a deeper samadhi and you develop your, the understanding, your realization or whatever that you be there. But slowly you need to emerge from it allow the mind to start dealing with the other affairs, allow sights, sounds, smells, all to trigger the mind, so that various defilements may start appearing, but you start practicing vipassana, by the way. Again and again, you recognize if there is any kind of attachment happens, now you abandon it. Any kind of anger happens, you abandon it. Any kind of defilement happen, you recognize it, allow it to go. So you do a Chittanupassana practice, Dhammanupassana practice. So as a result of that, defilements become weaker and weaker. Defilements become weaker and weaker. So as a result of that, now the result is you can maintain undefiled mind even at a shallow concentration. Now you don't need a deep concentration for you to be safe, because the intruding forces coming from defilements are very less because you already handled them. So that's why Buddha emphasized Panyaya Diswa Pahatabba. Again and again, you have seen the rising of the defilements through wisdom, through, say, your mindfulness and wisdom. You are able to tackle them. So that is where the mindfulness and clear comprehension, or mindfulness and wisdom, are playing the vital action here. So Buddha mentioned in the Tissametteya Sutta of Parayanavagga, Yani sotani lokasmin satitesan nivaranam sotanang sangvaram brumi panyayete pitiyare. So basically, mindfulness helps us to check the defilements. Mindfulness helps us to properly recognize defilements. And once they are properly recognized, now the wisdom is there to completely uproot them, to abandon them. So they are working together, mindfulness and wisdom. So as a result of the practice, now defilements, the tendencies become weaker and weaker. Now you don't need deep concentration because the safety is already there. There is no one to attack. Defilements are fairly subsided, defilements are fairly weakened. So even at a shallow level, you can maintain an undefiled mind, a pure type of mind. So therefore, in our Vipassana practice also, so as we continue, probably we may come to a deeper concentrated level, unattached level, but with some support coming from the Samadhi. But later what we need to do to allow the mind to become vulnerable in a way. Rather than being in the deeper concentration, you need to come out from that. Let the mind to deal with various other affairs so that you know exactly, okay, these are the defilements coming out. Let me handle it. Let them go. So you know various Vipassana techniques. So accordingly, you are slowly weakening various defilements. Now even while walking, you can maintain the anisita state. Even while walking, while your eyes are open, maybe others are there talking, smells are there, all the other, say disturbing factors are still there, but mind remain calm. Mind doesn't want to get involved. Mind doesn't want to get disturbed. Mind has found its seclusion amidst all these other external disturbances. So here we can see the advantage of the practice. So as you continue, it is not that you are supposed to entertain a very deep concentration, rather in an open awareness, while walking, while simply standing, while gazing, still your mind becomes secluded. Your mind becomes unattached, not getting involved, not holding on to anything. So this is what I meant by the advantage or the shallow concentration that we need to slowly experience. It has a practical reference, practical value.
Thank you, Bhante. We have 2 more questions. We are almost up with time.
No problem. We will proceed.
Okay. So question number 6 of 7. This is also a general question. Bhante, what is meant by the term free will? It is said that there is no such thing as free will. Is it because everything is conditioned due to causes and effects? If that is the case, how can we make wise choices in the present? Is that also conditioned? Also, are we conditioned by the Dhamma and the path leading to Nibbana? Also, a conditioning process. Then once the Dhamma is used to cross over as the raft simile, we have to let go of the Dhamma too eventually. But is it but it is said Nibbana is unconditioned. Thank you, Bhante. That is the end of the question.
Yeah, very good. Very good question. By the way, I mean, you are going into more into the rational, logical type of thinking. Now, say like this. Say you had a completely dusty, rusty, dirty kind of a cloth. And you are using various detergents to remove all the dirt. You are washing it again and again. You are using various detergents to take out all the dirt. And now it becomes more and more clean, more and more clear. So therefore, these detergents have a purpose. So it is the kind of a purification, helping to purify the cloth. Ultimately, the cloth become more pure. Maybe we'll say it is more white, more pure. Now, if we consider the conditioning part, what can we say? Is the white cloth more conditioned or the dirty cloth more conditioned? So we can say, okay, the original nature of the cloth seems to be white, but as a result of, say, inappropriate or careless kind of usage or day-to-day usage, so it has become dirty. So that's how it become it become conditioned, but now again it has somewhat become deconditioned. So therefore, Buddha basically has answered, telling even the Noble Eightfold Path is conditioned. But the interesting thing is, this Noble Eightfold Path is the least way of conditioning the mind, and ultimately it will become unconditioned. I mean, the mind become unconditioned. So Noble Eightfold Path is conditioned, true, but it will lead to the unconditioned. So path is not the goal. Path is helpful to achieve the goal. Right.
Question number 7 of 7. This is the last question. It's a general question. Dear Bhante, what does the term choiceless awareness mean, please? Does that refer to complete acceptance in the present and only the present? We have the ability to change the next moment or karma using a wholesome response. That's the end of the question.
Yeah, we can agree with that. So basically at the beginning we are not practicing choiceless awareness. Rather, we use purposeful attention to a selected phenomena. Say while walking, different characteristics are visible and you are particularly selecting one easy characteristic, prominent characteristic, and you are paying close attention to it and trying to understand its true nature. But this, as a result of this practice, so slowly, mind starts detached from all this, and then it's kind of maintaining a kind of a distance between all these phenomena. And now mind has a tendency to fairly maintain kind of a choiceless awareness. So even though different objects are available, mind doesn't want to attach to anything. Mind has the capacity to maintain kind of a, say, independent attention, maintain kind of a unattached, say, view to any of these phenomena. So if you need, you can select any of thing. It depends on your choice. Not that the object is attracting the mind, rather your mind has become capable of maintaining kind of a distance without attached to anything. And you can maintain a kind of awareness to everything at equal attention or equal, how to say, like without any kind of a like or dislike, you become fairly unbiased. So at this level, we can say we have the choiceless awareness.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was the last question. We have gone over a little over time as well, so we will end the program today. So to end the program, I would first like to pass our merits and thank Bhante for his valuable time, even with the busy schedule at the monastery. To all the supporters of this program, both seen and unseen, and to the participants for joining today to practice and share their questions. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thero
Yeah, Thero Sarnai.